Put some announcements.
Lights going on? No, man. Does it just sound?
Hello, everyone. One super quick announcement. Just wanted to let everyone know, you probably saw the email, but wanted to let you know that the AWS Innovation Lab is live, so I just wanted to take 20 seconds and explain what that means. We've partnered with Amazon to get access to a pretty wide open sandbox for us to use for experimentation, hackathons, working to get like the Foodles app migrated over to the Innovation Lab. People interested in trying out Amazon services, maybe you're studying for a certification exam, even a proof of concept, like you want to try something out for a project, but you want to have a sandbox to try it out in first. That's the kind of thing we're using the Innovation Lab for. We're getting free credits from Amazon, so we're encouraged to take advantage of that. So if you have any questions about that, if you're wondering what you can do with it, want to get access, just send me a note or take a look at the email that went out about a week ago. So thank you.
If you guys want to go ahead and get started. Any other?
Sure. We have quarterly coming up on August 23rd, so 3.5 weeks. So get excited for that. We're going to update the calendar invite, but we're going to Old Crow Smokehouse on Kinsey. So it should be a good time. So hope to see you all there.
Were there any other announcements?
We also have the Chicago Fire game on August 14th, a Sunday. The game is at 3 o'clock. We did a pub to pitch last year. It was a lot of fun. Many funds were had. The stadium is down by Midway, but we do the pub to pitch, which is a meet at the bar, the bus takes you down, you go to the game and you have fun. So information's in the email that was sent out a little bit ago, but I'm sure we can resend it. It's buy your own tickets, do your own thing. They're already as cheap as we're going to be able to get them. So we're not buying anything ahead of time this time. Everyone just kind of does themselves. So there are a very good amount of people that are interested in going.
And also next Friday, in conjunction with Fridays at 4, we're doing Brain Bash Trivia. So make sure you're getting your trivia teams put together. The sign up in the Google Docs is in the link in the email that was sent out yesterday, and then we'll send it out again so you have it. So we have Jeremy Kahneman, who runs Brain Bash Trivia in Chicago, coming to the office to host trivia for us, so it should be a good time. If you just want to spectate and not take part, please come and join us for Fridays at 4. We'll have pizza and drinks and all that good stuff.
Let's start right at 4.
Yep, right at 4.
So yeah, today we have the HoloLens Hackathon intro for our brown bag. Next week, though, will also be a really fun one. We're going to be doing some fun things with our beer distributor. They're going to be doing a beer tasting. The full details will be coming out probably tomorrow. Yeah, you guys can go ahead and kick it off.
Hi, I'm Peter Caprice. We'll be talking about HoloLens and how you can develop for the hackathon. We'll start off with going over the dev dependencies that you'll need, and we'll do a quick intro to Unity, talk about how you should use Unity when working with a team.
Can you speak up a bit?
Sure. So we're going to start with the dev dependencies that you need to do HoloLens development. We'll do a quick intro to Unity. We'll talk about what you need to do to work successfully on a team while using Unity. There's a Holo toolkit that you will want to use to get your projects off the ground. We'll go over build settings, how to deploy the emulator into the physical device, and then we'll show you some additional resources. Then after that, I think we're going to have time to do some brainstorming on what kind of projects people want to do. So here we go.
Okay. So for the HoloLens, you need a VM, since right now you can only develop on Windows machines. So
if you have a Windows machine.
Show off.
So it's recommended that you use Windows 8 Pro or Enterprise Edition, since it requires Hyper-V to run the HoloLens emulator. And as we noticed, there's some performance issues with running in parallel, since you're running Hyper-V inside of a VM. So it's recommended that you install Windows User Bootcamp for developing anything for the HoloLens. So here are the dependencies you need once you get the VM set up. You need Visual Studio 2015. For what we used on our VM was the Community Edition, since it's free. the Windows 10 SDK, which is provided by Visual Studio Community. The HoloLens emulator, which pretty much allows you to build and test your apps using the HoloLens, or using an emulator rather than actually using the HoloLens and plugging into it. And then you need Unity for the Microsoft. So to develop any scenes or any 3D apps within the Microsoft HoloLens environment, you need to run with Unity. And as of right now, we have a VM set up. We're going to be deploying it to a flash drive, so if anyone needs or wants the environment, they can just talk to us and we'll give it to you and you can install it on your machine.
And we have a real professional version of Visual Studio as long as you have an MSDN license.
Okay.
You're added to the Slalom subscription.
Okay.
So if you want professional on there, just email me and we get set up.
Okay. Yeah, and it's not needed for any of the HoloLens development stuff. Yeah.
So we're going to do a real fast run through of what you'll need to know in Unity to kind of do something in it. Unity, if you don't know, is a cross-platform game engine for developing 2D and 3D games. It comes with a game editor, physics engine, you can do scripting in it. It does a whole lot of graphics rendering, and you can develop in either mono-develop or Visual Studio for the scripting. You can script in C#, JavaScript, or Boo. I don't know what Boo is, but it's an object-oriented language. Most people do C# and JavaScript since I don't even think they have Boo in like the APIs on the Unity site. So pick one of those two, whichever your team is comfortable with. This is what the game editor looks like. You have a scene view, which is where you kind of can look at the objects that are in there. On the left, number 3 there, you have a hierarchy, and that's all your game objects get put in there. If you select a game object in number 4, there's an inspector, and it kind of shows you all these components you can throw on there. And then you can see your project structure down there, number 1. It may or may not look like this when you open it, but you can kind of adjust your work view to fit your needs. So Unity is a game object, and everything has this transform on it, which just has where it's located in the 3-dimensional space, as well as how it's oriented and sized. For HoloLens, so in Unity, everything is like a 1 is 1 meter, and that roughly translates to 1 meter in the real world for HoloLens development. So keep that in mind if you want to make something that's like 10 things large, it's going to be huge. And if you want, so Unity has a very rich physics engine. If you want to have your objects do physics kind of stuff like fall, you need to attach this component called a rigid body to it. And you can make things heavy or light, and they can kind of interact with each other. There's also components called colliders, which they allow you to like know when things are kind of touching each other. If you want something to happen when you get close to another object, you need to attach a collider component to your game object. And for any scripting, then this mono behavior class. And if you do that, then you can attach it to a game object. And any public attributes, you can then edit in the game editor. So maybe you have a designer and you want to be able to tweak stuff. You put public attributes in your scripts, and then they can just change them in the editor without having to go into the scripting. And that's but here on the next slide too, there's a lot to know there. Unity has support for a lot of basic shapes, cubes, cylinders, spheres. You can also kind of attach them together to make more complex objects. If you want to do anything like maybe create like a human kind of person, you'll probably want to do that in some kind of 3D, like my, I forget what other ones are, but if you want to do anything complex, you will not probably be able to do that in Unity.
Yeah, my Blender, the little 3D, those are very thick, Photoshop-y, heavy tools. I always recommend SketchUp. It's like the MS Paint of 3D rendering. It's pretty easy to do, and you can download it and it's free. So, and there's a library in a lot of these applications and SketchUp that allow you to just go to an asset store and pull stuff down during the hackathon. A lot of people use that store to get assets for free and stuff like that. So.
There's really at least one camera. You can have multiple cameras if you want to do kind of picture-in-picture stuff, but as far as I know, that won't really work that well with the HoloLens if you're doing a 3D holographic app. But we'll get more into that later too. You probably want some lights, at least shining one over whatever objects you're making, because it'll kind of make it stand out in the world. There's also UI components you can add, like buttons, text, and those all get overlaid on kind of like a heads-up display that's separate from the 3D world. So mono behavior. This is anything you want to script. You'll need to extend this mono behavior class. Don't ever instantiate the objects yourself. Don't even try to do anything in the constructor, because Unity will kind of bring them up itself. And if you do extend mono behavior, you can take the script and attach it to any game object. And that'll let you not only, as we saw before, modify those attributes that are set publicly in the game editor, you can participate in the game lifecycle. So everything is going to get called. So like start is a method that will get called, you can override, and that is where you want to replace anything you would typically do in a constructor. And then there's two update methods. One is called fixed update, and that's for if you're doing any physics kind of stuff, you want to put all of that in there. And that gets called a regular fixed interval. So it may happen more than once per frame, but I believe it's guaranteed to happen at least once per frame. And then update is another method that gets called only once per frame, but since a single frame can vary how long it takes to be executed, you don't want to do any physics kind of calculations in there, because you'll get like weird stuttering or like, jumps, because it's not a fixed interval. So you may see like this thing should be moving at 1 meter per second, and you think a frame is like a 30th of a second, but it's not. So, and then onDestroy is kind of like a destructor method. You can do any cleanup you need in there. There's also a lot of events you can attach to your mono behavior objects. Anything like on mouse up, on mouse down, on mouse enter. With HoloLens, you're not really going to care about those because there is no mouse, so there's other events we'll talk about, but you will probably want to do some stuff with on trigger enter or on collide when kind of objects hit each other. And you can learn more about this as that URL kind of goes through the whole life cycle of what happens in a single frame and the life cycle of an object. So using Unity is tricky when you're trying to share code with other team members, since a lot of the objects in there are binary files. Anything that's not a script is going to be a binary file. And because of that, it's hard to do diffs and verify that if you, like, for example, move a position of an object in a scene, you're going to, and someone else changes it as well, you're not going to know like what really happened there. It's just going to pick one or the other if you try to do like a merge conflict resolution. There are pay-for options that kind of figure that out for you. Asset Server, Perforce, and Plastic SPM. I think some have free trials that you could try out for the hackathon. But there are a few extra things you can do to use Git or Subversion or something similar. But you'll want to just take extra care to make sure that your work doesn't clobber someone else's work. So just pull and commit often. If you're making changes in the scene hierarchy, you want to communicate with other team members that you're making those changes and make sure that they know about that and they can maybe pull your changes before making similar changes. And there are some settings you can apply that will add these meta files to every single object you have. And so long as you can verify that those meta files are getting added and updated, you should be okay. But you just have to make sure everyone on your team does that. Otherwise, you're gonna run into trouble. So before you even like pull, make sure everyone goes to this and follows the directions that are on this site here. Just want to avoid that headache. So Microsoft has released this Holo Toolkit. It has a lot of scripts that are there to kind of get you ready to interact with the HoloLens within Unity. You can go to the GitHub site there and pull it down, but you do need to export it from Unity as a package and then import it into your project. And then it'll show up as a menu item, so you can just add all these components to your project. So you can follow these directions. They're also listed again at that site. It's pretty straightforward how to do that. And I'll kind of walk through some more important things that to look at right now. So there's the input that the HoloLens can consume. There's a few scripts in there. There's a gaze manager, which basically helps you figure out what the user is looking at. And you can override an on-gaze enter event and on-gaze leave event to know that the user is looking at some specific object or not. So you can just, in your mono-behavior object, override that method. There's also a gesture manager. So when a person does that kind of select event, you can be notified that they selected this item wherever it is in the Holo world. There's also a keyword manager, so that can allow you. Question.
So in terms of the gaze, is that based off of like the crosshair that they have in the HoloLens, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So in your app, that crosshair won't be there unless you. That last item I have on there, cursor prefab, that will let you have that in your app, and it can also. I don't know if you're familiar, but if your hand is in the view, the HoloLens kind of changes the cursor to let you know it's identified that there's a hand in the view. So you can pull all those into your project. You just need to pull them in, otherwise it'll be totally blank.
And that's part of that toolkit that we saw on the previous slide. The import.
And there's a keyword manager too, so you can do voice recognition, and you can say, you can have certain words that have certain meaning in your project, and the keyword manager will allow you to respond to those and handle those. There's also spatial mapping. You can bring in the spatial mapping manager script, and that'll let you import either like pre-created worlds that you've already kind of mapped out. It'll also let you update the view within your project. So the user's moving, you can say, hey, refresh the world so I can make sure that I'm interacting with the right services. There's a tap to play script, which seems like it would be good if you wanted to be moving things around physically. Any kind of thing that you're hologram that you're trying to move around, you probably want to attach that tap to play script to it.
The spatial mapping, does that actively provide essentially the skybox is the wrong word, but the construct of your environment?
Yeah, so when you start up, you know how it maps the room. So we can import that and use that spatial map and build the scene dynamically.
Gotcha. And then that's obviously provided using, if you have items in your world that have a rigid body, it'll interact with that.
Yeah, it'll collide with
that. Collide. Okay.
And there's a whole bag of utilities there. A few that may be of interest are, there's a singleton one that you can extend. There's a tag-along script where it seemed like that would be good if you wanted to have an object kind of follow another object. There's a billboard one, which I think seems like it makes it easy to kind of have a display in front of you that would kind of always be facing you, no matter which way you turned. And an interpolator, which I didn't really look at, but I assumed it interpolates things for you. There was a lot of advanced stuff in there too. There's a sharing library where you can kind of do like multi-HoloLens to probably create some Tron-like game. And all sorts of spatial sound libraries to let you do all kinds of cool audio stuff. It seemed like it was a little more advanced, so people may not get it out. So let's talk about build settings real quick. Once you have your project in Unity set up and ready to go, you need to go to this build settings window and make sure that up at the top, you need to make sure you add whatever scenes in that build, and then you need to change the platform to a Windows Store platform and make sure you hit that switch platform button, which is currently disabled on this view because you already switched to it. And then you need to have a Universal 10 SDK D3D build, and make sure to check that Unity C# project box. After you have to go in the player settings and make sure that you go, so you click like the little Windows Store logo, and then you open the publishing settings, and you have to click microphone and spatial perception so that those capabilities can be added to your project. You also need to make sure that you check the virtual reality supported box and add the HoloLens SDK. If you don't check that, then your app will just be rendered as a universal Windows app. So it'll be kind of like a window that's in your in your view, like the real world, but all your 3D stuff will be inside that window, so it'll be really hard to interact with. And if you do check that, then the objects will be in your world instead of like through this little window. And once you've built your project, you need to go to the build file that you generated, and there's a Visual Studio solution in there. You need to open that, and then you make it a release build targeting x86 in either the HoloLens emulator or the physical device if you have it with you. And then you kick it off and then you start without debugging. And assuming everything has gone smoothly until now, you should see the emulator come up and your app get deployed onto it. And there's a device portal where you can check how things are going. You can see what the device is seeing as well. If you're using the emulator, there's a little button that looks like a globe. You click that, that'll open up the device portal for you. You can also connect to it through Wi-Fi and USB, going through a web browser and hitting either the specific IP address of your HoloLens or just that address if you're connected via USB. We've got some additional resources that contain pretty much everything that's in these slides that are up here and more. There's a lot of good tutorials on Unity at unity3d.com. You can take a look at those if you want to learn more, as well as just HoloLens setup and development. Questions?
What are the interactive features that the emulator doesn't support? Like, I know it supports the gaze when you move the cursor, you kind of understand how to work with the gaze. Are there any interactions that the emulator doesn't support?
As far as I can tell, any kind of input it can support. I don't know about audio support, like voice recognition. You may be able to hook your computer's microphone up to it. I haven't checked that out, but definitely anything with head movement or like tapping and dragging, all of that works in the emulator. And spatial mapping, it has like pre-baked rooms for you that you can pick. There's probably like 4 or 5, I think, in there. You can also do like a spatial mapping yourself and export it, and then import it into the emulator if you want to like maybe map it. Since you know.
Oh, you can. So you can take a picture.
I'm not sure how.
Yeah, you probably have that map is using.
Yeah, you have to use the HoloLens to map it and then use that.
Or build it yourself.
As
You can build the map yourself if you really want or something. Again, special.
What about if you're doing some sort of sharing? You're trying to get 2 HoloLens to see different things. Would the emulator support some version of 2 views?
So I don't think it supports 2 views. I think what happens is you can I don't even know if the emulator would support it, but the way the networking works, I think, is one is the server and one's the client. And so the client just gets whatever the server sees, but it can interact with the objects in the server's world.
Yeah, they both share the same state, but they would both look at the same state differently based on where they are in the spatial mapping of the room. And if one isn't the server and one's if they're both clients to a central state location, then obviously they still would both be sharing the same state, just viewing it from the vantage point. Because I know people were able to get shared state between HoloLens applications, because again, it's just a Unity application and it's getting the state via network requests and displaying it to the user. That's just fine. It's not easy, but.
As for the rooms, you can connect to the web client thing that you just mentioned, and you can actually view what the HoloLens mapped currently, and I believe you can save that and export it, and then you can inject it into the emulator one.
How fast is it to spatial recognize something that's moving? Can it recognize a person is moving around or no?
It's really only good at recognizing static objects. And so if you do have a person that's maybe sitting there and it kind of recognizes them and then they move, you should give it a second to figure out that, okay, that thing is no longer there. So
it will do it automatically, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
you may need, I mean, in your own app, you may need to call off to that spatial mapping manager and say, hey, like refresh every once in a while. Cool, thanks.
So we went to the Developer Microsoft HoloLens 101 page, and they had a sample of the origami project in C#. Are there any links to the same in JS?
I think they're all C#. They're provided by Microsoft.
Did we lose any functionality when we switched to JavaScript? Or C#?
No, it should be the same. Yeah.
Should it be the same?
Yeah, it actually compiles it to C#. But that's so easy, you can do what it needs to do. I mean, JavaScript is there just to make it easier for people to write for something that they want to C#. You know, why not just accounting? I assume Buddha is the exact same thing. For those that were not able to play with the HoloLens all this year, there were a few games on it. So for things like the hologram app, that was actively spatially mapping your location. You put holograms on a couch and things like that. For games that actually had a more rigid structure to the life cycle of what we were doing, like level 1, level 2, and stuff like that, it actually asked you to map your area first, and then tell you, all right, I think we're good. We've got enough mapping. Would you like to save that? Yes, and continue. Sure. And then it would use that mapping without further mapping of playing the game. So if you walked in, it wouldn't use them. It wouldn't accidentally try to do that. So that might be something to consider whether or not you want to map once and use it. It could be like an initialization of your application, or to provide that ongoing spatial mapping if you aggressively want to perform those AR related things online. So.
One thing I want to stress is that getting even the dev environment set up takes a lot of time. So try to start that as soon as possible. There's a lot of hurry up and waiting for stuff to install, download, and whatnot.
The VM, you said there was still a VM that people could download and use. At what point in the process is it set up for? Is it just the VM itself? Just to download everything? Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of issues with getting that a cookie cutter set up for people.
Yeah. So we posted like a lot of that, like notes on that in the conflicts page that we created, or like any issues that arise, something how to fix them based on like what we found, like searching.
Yeah. So I mean, in context of the hackathon itself, I would try to understand at best what the limitations be of your application and if it would be feasible. And you certainly would not need everyone to be able to develop on a Unity within each Unity. We've seen in previous hackathons as well, there's a lot of work surrounding the actual deliverable of your group that requires work too without needing to download this VM, get the Unity emulator working, and all that stuff. So certainly delegate and be able to split up work amongst the team. So don't think that is a blocker for everyone on the team. That's all I'm going to say.
Do you guys know what's going to be presented, or like charges going to be writing all of that, interacting with the application, or is it going to be like a video recording?
So we still have to actively define exactly what the deliverables are for each team. But we have to standard. What we've seen in the past with other hackathons is that demoing live would sometimes be a pain, and it would be nice to be able to demo things live. But even with the Amazon Alexa one, you were able to demo it in a browser if you wanted to.
Yeah.
With the Oculus one, you were able to demo that without actually using an Oculus if you really wanted to as well. So for everyone to be able to kind of like adjust to be able to actually see what someone's delivered for an actual project here, I would probably utilize the emulator itself or utilize the actual HoloLens itself with the application on it, and you can record a demo of your application. That might be one of the best ways to demo functionality in terms of like have a 5-second GIF of a certain functionality of what you're delivering. Come up with a 1 minute long video.
Is there like full screen kind of thing like those or you can just like share your HoloLens screen?
There is, because you actually connect to the HoloLens itself via IP and view what it sees. So you get that dual screen approach, but you actually see what it sees. It actually looks better from that view because everything's got like a weird overlay, a 2D overlay of it.
Yeah. And like, if you hit the IP of the HoloLens, it'll take you to a site like this where you can actually see what the person.
Yeah, that's a server running on the HoloLens.
Yeah.
That you can get all that information from.
And you can capture like mixed reality video where it shows you what you're seeing, like the real world, and then the holograms are all overlaid on top of that. And it captures audio and everything.
Yes, there's only one camera. Yeah, there's one camera in the front that lets you do that recording.
We're not paying to do demos via that it's gotta be pre-recorded and packaged.
Maybe a mix of both, right? Just maybe a mix of both, because I'm trying to think, how can we have everyone install and successfully install their application onto it? Given everyone's going to be up until the last minute having something being developed, what would we look to here? But what's the best way for a team to be able to deliver what they built? And I think it's a mix of all of those. Whatever they want to do, if they really want to demo it in the space, maybe having it live and doing a dual screen approach is what they need. Or maybe it's better demoed using just snippets of functionality and play with it after and stuff like that. So.
Is that the intent across market as well then? Or like, when they have final?
I believe so, and especially since this is like an elongated hackathon, that we kind of need to define actual deliverables for things for teams. That way that carries on to like the next phases and things like that. We didn't really have that in the Oculus one, and we kind of saw that with the Alexa one when people did demo later in the process. It would have been nice if everyone had their stuff ahead of time bundled in a common fashion. So, but that means you can make deliverables. You can make your demo much earlier and have it a little more structured instead of doing it live, which ends up with exactly all the problems we'd expect and always see when doing anything live.
Talking about teams, brainstorming.
So right now, I know the devices were shipped out. I didn't check the tracking number, but I assume it's in Boston now. One's in Boston. Yeah, should be. The other one's somewhere else right now. So they'll make their way back here. The exact timeline is on that one site for when all of this is starting out. I'll try to bring that up to the actual site. There you go. So there'll be more information on here as well, but we're basically starting off a lot of the hackathon related stuff within Chicago, I believe. Or did that change? I apologize. Sorry. That might have changed. Chicago was originally supposed to be the one starting this entire hackathon.
It's like Seattle.
Seattle is doing it first, yeah.
Those are the dates of the actual hackathon. Or is there a distinction between the final and initial? Is that a no?
I think things did get moved to October.
So, is that the final? Is the finals for all? So the winner could be jumped.
I mean, so people can definitely have a bunch of time, but there's no reason not to start literally as soon as possible. That's when people feel like they are ready. So I know there were some emails that went out in regards to forming teams. There were people that were interested in just saying they were available to do something, but did not necessarily have an idea of who would lead the team, or they just want to become on a team and stuff like that. I mean, self-form as much as you possibly want. It's like previous hackathons we've done in the past. It's free form.
So just to be clear, are we actually doing like a day where we're all going to be kind of hacking, or is this more like an hacker days, like teams work separately on their entries? Better way to ask my question.
Yes, but there will be still like that day or two of like, okay, here's actually some time you can actually operate and develop in the office itself. But as we've seen with the previous projects and hackathons, getting as much work done up front and early as possible is a good thing. We're not trying to throw wrenches last minute at people and be like, all right, make your project, do something special last minute and shoehorn it in. It's probably best if people are able to make something, not just all development in one day.
Snowland was great.
Snowland was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, this is much more complicated than the Alexa or the Oculus, I would say. It just is.
So you start installing all this stuff, you're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, we were able to provide a simple Unity setup for people to immediately get into the Oculus demo. This is not the same thing because we're all have OS X machines, and this is the HoloLens itself is fairly cutting edge. I mean, it's using technologies that aren't provided anywhere else today. So,
so are those final bubbles there? Are those the fully actual hackathon events?
I believe they should be the actual final days, and that's the. I'm looking for the specific. We have an outline of when the devices will be here, and that's kind of indicating when the actual hackathons themselves will be occurring.
Also, if you can boot camp your Mac, that's highly recommended because I've just been trying to boot up the emulator in general. My computer for my parallels actually. And when you get the emulator running, it's like 2 frames a second. So.
I took Peter's advice and did boot camp.
Yeah.
That's great.
How's that work? Is it working
It's
better?
a lot faster.
Okay.
And more stable.
Yeah, which is another thing where not everyone on a team will potentially need to have a development environment on their machine. Getting boot camp set up isn't trivial,
I've got pretty good.
but it's not too difficult either, so it's like a little bit in between. Plenty of things to do on a team for something that's being delivered. Documentation, brainstorming, requirements, stuff like that. So, you guys won the Chicago Alexa hackathon, and then you guys demoed a bunch of stuff to Amazon in Seattle itself.
Yeah, so
What did you find to be some of the more recommended parts of the deliverable for this hackathon? Because that's what people should kind of try to target as well.
Yeah, that sort of came as a surprise to us. I think it was like a month after Chicago, we got the email from Seattle saying, hey, you're going to Amazon. So now that you guys know that Microsoft is in the picture, I guess that would help give some extra bonus. Like there was a lot of our team built everything on AWS to start with, so we didn't really have much refactoring to do, but 2 of the other teams, I think Toronto's and Boston's, had to refactor their entire apps from Azure over to AWS, so I don't think they really challenge. So this hackathon, this is all one stack anyways, it seems. But the judges we had were all leadership from Amazon, which is kind of cool. But they were more interested in how did you use our technologies? What cool things did you do that didn't exist in the community at large? So maybe take a look at what things are out there for HoloLens. It's still pretty new. One guy in Seattle didn't even do a demo of a scale for Echo stuff. He just built a whole IntelliJ plugin, and that was his project. So there might be other things to help the HoloLens community out that are still demo hackathon type projects that aren't necessarily 3D games or experiences. So keep that in mind too. But criteria-wise, I mean, it was just make it work, I think would be the biggest thing. The people who had a working application even with less features was more successful probably than trying to explain through pictures what you should be doing. So live demos are always best. Well, it's going to be a lot harder for this. I don't know if you need more specific than that, but
no, I mean, yeah, all those sorts of things.
You get
trying to make sure those are bulleted out, and
you get time, I guess, too. Even in this timeline, it looks like after Chicago's done, it's going to be 3 months of extra time, and you're expected to use that to add more stuff. So always keep in the back pocket what you didn't get to do or always wanted to do, and you'll probably get a chance to do it between those 2 time frames too. That's a long time.
this is the first attempt at somewhat of a rolling hackathon, and given the Alexa was only $100 to purchase one, these are much more. We have a very limited amount of devices, and that's why those devices are at specific locations at the time of their hackathons. We're large enough to get both. Toronto and Boston aren't, and we get one. So I wouldn't try to make the HoloLens itself be a blocker for doing development, and for everyone on the team, I would try not to make the actual development environment a blocker for doing things. There's plenty of documentation and design and just brainstorming and stuff that make your story be something that other people might want to listen to. So we will give exact dates. I just want to make sure before we say. I know it's changed it's actually changed pretty rapidly because they just brought Houston into the mix. They tapped away in December. Just why not? Is that December? It is the full. They just start December 1st. Yeah. Any other specific questions? Because I know people definitely work independently, but are suggested to work in teams, and that should be fairly self-organized, but we can try to make that a little more visible about who's on what team, just so people are seeing if they want to tack on with or if there's one specific team, things like that. So
let's go and do that by spreadsheet.
So we still need to get the full list of what Jeremiah, he's going to create that initial Google Doc form. So we get the full list of people there and aggregate it together. And then I don't think that the independent sign-up list ever went out, but that would have gone out to everyone as well. So we have to parse it down. But that's simply what we're looking for right now, the ability to kind of take 4 people that are looking to do something and get them together. Or just be loud about it.
Yeah.
So price of 4, try to do a team, so things like that. If you really want to be fancy about it, I mean, you can try to reach out to some of the other markets and work with them too, but it's I know, yeah. Good look at that time zone difference in Seattle then. You guys didn't have a demo working on that time, did you? Of anything from this
I have a
process?
video that I took. I had it with me. Show that.
Gotcha. So the majority of the effort to getting that local setup is that's the majority of the effort to get the local environment.
Yeah.
Once that's
started
good.
boot camp. I have origami running on the emulator.
Gotcha.
Do that right now.
Yeah, if anyone wants to stick around and see that, once it's running a boot camp, you're essentially running Windows environment, and all the tutorials pretty much just work, right?
Are you setting up the boot camp now?
So I got the yeah, it is I actually just came out
Here I've already gone through the whole build process. The HoloLens 101, as you just create this hologram, and it just sits there in your world. Bring the emulator up. Takes a little time.
Just crash it. You have to keep it open. Then it doesn't entire bandwidth.
Looks like live. Well, it's the same thing. Wait, so
Yeah, it is pretty cool. The emulator itself is essentially running the entire HoloLens. Just about any hour.
Oh, yeah, I mean.
It looks like it's
Plug it so yeah, it's just a basic UGC that you want to do. In theory, it shows up just the basic stuff. Oh, yeah, that's why I'm playing on you.
So that scene that have any walls on it.
You didn't import any mapping or spatial mapping. Is that right?
It has,
That's what.
Oh, you can write that in there. Yeah.
yeah, better too.
Yeah.
And then,
There's no light sources.
There is in this guy, but also, it's in the UZ app, so it's like attached to this hologram.
Yeah, I think it's provided.
Right, because why would the light up the room?
Yeah. So like walking around, this thing is 60.
Oh, yeah, no,
And then the emulator, the like zoom gesture to go back is the Windows key, and then space is select.
What's the equivalent on Mac? Given there's no Windows key.
We'll try to later on that hour later.
Oh, I mean, just like,
On the wall, there's a wall.
Yeah.
They did find the wall.
Good job.
And like wherever this little dot is, that's what's going to be. You see it's underscore right now?
Yeah. Because right now you're essentially moving the gaze, right? So if you click on holograms, you can interact with all of the existing emulator provided. Okay. That's cool. That's nice.
No, I haven't. Oh yeah, there's something you have to do like get the emulator on the internet.
And then
One of the get that set up.
Cool, thanks guys.
So,